Hello. All right. All right. My name's Adam Connor. I am VP of Organizational Design for Mad Pow. And so building on Amy's talk about purpose, I'll talk about kind of what I found my purpose, or at least my interest, to be. I started as a digital product designer back in 2001, working at a large financial services company. I was there for about 8 years. I moved on to Mad Pow and ventured into service design and strategy. And all the while, I got really interested in kind of how to make projects work, how to get people to play well together. And then one day, I got very ill. I ended up in the ICU. It led to a diagnosis of a chronic condition that I now get infusions for once a month. And in the course of those infusions, I have become extremely good friends with my nurses, Cher and Darlene. And Cher and Darlene are very open with me about all the crap that they have to put up with in a hospital, about all the products and things that come in that they have to learn how to use and then relearn how to use. And being a designer and looking at these things, looking at the companies that are making these things, and knowing quite a few people that work in these companies, I always ask myself, how is it that such smart people can put out such stupid things? And so that's what's really gotten me interested in understanding, what does it take for an organization to really put design to use, to really carry it through and make effective products, to make effective experiences. And that's what led me to organizational design. What does it take to really design an organization to do the things it sets out to do? And so in our practice, we work with teams, we work with organizations to help them understand, how do you build innovation capacity? How do you infuse design throughout your organization? How do you build teams that work effectively together? And what I wanted to share with you today quickly are just 5 of kind of the lessons that we've learned in these endeavors, right? And so the first topic I want to talk about is training, because this is the first one that always comes up whenever an organization comes to us asking for some help, some advice. Can you train some of our staff? I got a request just the other day from an insurance company who wanted to talk about the possibility of training some of their project managers and product managers in design thinking. And training is an easy out. It seems intuitive. Well, if we want people to do something differently, we have to teach them how to do it, right? So let's hold a training. But the thing is that if you really want to see change in your organization, if you really want to see people behave differently, you've got to recognize that training is just one small piece. Training on its own is not enough to change behavior. And the way I like to illustrate this is using this model, the COM-B model. Right? This model helps to articulate what it takes to really see a behavior enacted. And what it says is that someone has to have the capability, they have to be able to do it. They have to mentally know how to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing. They have to physically be able to do it, right? They have to have the opportunity, right? They have to be in a world, in an environment, in a space where they can actually enact this behavior, right? Or just even a social environment where they feel like they have the opportunity, where they feel like there won't be severe repercussions if they do this thing. Right? And they have to have the motivation. They have to be driven to do it. And it can be because of their own motivations, their own desires, their own values. It can be because of external motivations and pushes. And if you think about this in terms of an organization and all the things that are happening in an organization and what's driving people to act in their organization, you can see that skills, tools, knowledge, all the stuff we touch on in training only touches that capability element. When we're talking about opportunity, we got to think about the processes, the policies, the information that's being shared, the roles that people have. And if we think about motivation, we have to think about the beliefs, the values that these people, and the metrics that they're being held to, right? And again, the roles that they hold. And so for organizations that really do want to see this change in behavior, we can't just expect that we're going to train people and they're going to come away with this new tool set and they're just going to add that to whatever they're already doing. No, this involves changing more than that. So we have to think about, how do we change processes? How do we change responsibilities? So whenever we do training with clients, we always incorporate that conversation into the training. We always talk about, how will you take this and apply it to your work? What do you think is going to get in your way? What is going to work against the things that we're talking about doing here? We try to make sure that we have those conversations with the people that ask for the training in the room, so that we can have that follow-up conversation and say, okay, so we just went through this training, and now you've heard some of these potential roadblocks. What can we do now to help these people go even further? So lesson number one is that we need to design for the whole set of circumstances that allow for these behaviors to change. Not just the learning, but the things that allow the learning to be activated. The next topic that comes up, probably second to training, is frameworks, right? Organizations say, hey, we know we need to change the way people are interacting. This agile thing looks good, or this lean thing sounds interesting, right? And I've worked with I'm working right now with an organization that is trying to figure out just like, what parts of agile, what's lean, where does design think, like how do I make sense of all of these frameworks, all of these different ways of doing this, right? So many organizations buy into the framework because they see the results that someone else has had with it, or that someone else purports to have had with it. But frameworks are not the answer themselves. Frameworks all stem from some set of beliefs, some set of underpinning values that someone thought, hey, these are the things that are important. So I'm going to create a structure that allows me to take action and other people to take action on these values, right? Agile is about that rapid change. Lean is about continuous learning. Design thinking is about deep understanding, right? There are these underpinning values to these things. And so as organizations, we can't just assume that we're going to take a framework and we're going to plunk it down and it's going to work for us, because as organizations, we have beliefs baked into the way we already operate, right? So we have our behaviors in our organization. And those are driven by the things we believe, the things we value, the things we're measured against, the things we deem to be important, right? And those are filtered through the world that we experience, the context in which we work. And this creates this cycle. And so we hope that by just sticking a framework in our world, we can change things. We can change the way we're going to work together. We can change the outcomes we're going to get. But when there's a disconnect between the underpinning beliefs of the framework we're trying to implement and the way we believe and behave already today, we get these breakdowns. We get this discomfort and these kind of repulsions from the change we're trying to create. So we can't just blindly choose a framework and put it in place. We have to go and take the extra step to understand, what beliefs are we currently seeing in our organization today? And what beliefs does this framework, or does this set of frameworks, really support? What are the connections between the two? How do we go from one to the other? Right? So financial services organizations, at least a lot of the ones that I've worked with, are still largely set up in these divisions of IT and design and marketing and sales, right? And they work together in certain ways. And they all have different metrics and things that they're working towards. And those things don't necessarily align. They all have different kind of value sets within these different structures. And so we have to understand and contrast those to the frameworks that we're trying to implement. We have to pick and choose bits and pieces of frameworks to work with the beliefs that we have, instead of trying to jump this huge chasm between where we are today and where we want to go tomorrow. So I just talked about design, IT, marketing, right? Organizational structures. Silos, that term been used yet today? If it hasn't, it'll probably be used at least 16 times. Someone want to keep count? Right. Silos are the things that designers, I think, hate most. Designers are like, oh, we got to kill the silos, burn the silos, right? Got to get rid of them. I used to think that too, and I've worked with a couple different companies now that went from this very kind of shared service-oriented, like IT, design, marketing model to trying to go to a product setup, right? Product teams. And I thought that was awesome, and I still think it's a great step. But here's what I learned. After they did that for a little while, new silos emerged around the products, because silos are inevitable. People group around shared interest, around shared values, right? People group according to geography. People group around all sorts of things because it's easy, right? It's a way for us to connect with the things that are meaningful to us and help us, a way for us to kind of shut down from the things that occur outside that and focus, right? We're always going to do it. That's never going to stop. So what we need to understand is that these silos, these groupings that occur within our organization, they end up getting reflected in what we produce, right? Conway's law, which comes from a computer science perspective, is all about how the software that an organization produces is going to be reflective of how the people within the organization actually communicate with one another. Because if you have to build one widget over here and I have to build one widget over there, the way those two widgets are going to talk to each other is very similar to the way we talk to each other. So if we know that these groupings are going to happen, and we know that they have their strengths, we need to design our organizations to take advantage of those strengths. We need to use silos, use groupings to the best of our ability, and design around them to counteract where those gaps emerge, because they still do emerge. So we have to plan and counteract for those things. Innovation is the hot topic. It's the reason we're all here. It's a buzzword, it's a goal, it's an experience, it's a result, it's, God damn it, it's everything, apparently. What I learned very early on, probably with probably one of my earliest clients at Mad Pow, which was a financial services organization, a bank, and we were working on some future efforts, some future state vision efforts, and it was all around what kind of ideas can we come up with to really bring the bank into the next century. How is managing your checking account, your savings account, your mortgage going to look in 10 years? And we spent a lot of time just coming up with ideas, taking what the bank currently had and trying to imagine what could this possibly look like in the future. That idea stuff is really exciting. It's fun to just be slapping Post-its on the wall and saying, well, what if we could do this, and what if we could do that, and maybe banking is more like going to a coffee shop, and like all of these different things, right? That gets people excited. But the thing is that there's a whole bunch of work that needs to come before that to make those ideas really have any value. And then there's a whole bunch of work that comes after that to really carry that value forward. And so many organizations focus on this midpoint, how are we going to find these new valuable concepts. Let's set up an innovation center, right? Or we'll set up an incubator program or something. They focus on this, the midpoint. They don't spend enough time up front on this whole understanding piece, on really knowing who their customers are and what the experiences are like today and what situations people go through and what really drives them. And where we do find research very often, it happens after there's been a trigger. It's, hey, I'm interested in this problem, go study it for a bit. And people go out and they study it for a bit and they come back and they write a report and they hand over the report and that kicks off the design process. But not a lot of organizations are constantly researching, constantly evolving their understanding of their customers, constantly going deeper and deeper into the experiences they have, tracking how outside influences beyond just what the bank or the insurer or whoever they are, what they're doing. What are the other things happening in these people's lives as they get older, as technology changes? How does that change their needs? That constant evolving model of who our customers are, not a lot of organizations do that. To me, that's the grease and the glue that holds this whole thing together. And then once you do have an idea, there's this other end. Okay, we've got an idea. We've tested it a bit. We feel like this has got some validity. We feel like we can make a business out of this. We feel like we can sustain this. Well, now it comes time to actually sustain it. It comes time to evolve that because the innovation process, whatever we want to call it, only goes so far. At some point, there has to be a handoff. At some point, it has to be about product management or service management or experience management, whatever vein we want to put in there. And so that practice needs to be in place. We have to know how to do that well. So a lot of times when I work with an organization on their innovation process, I talk about their product or service management process. Do they have one? What does that look like today? How can we get that involved? Because you have to design for this whole life cycle, this whole stream. You have to have good information, a good bank of information to pull ideas from. You have to have a great place for ideas and solutions to go and live on and continue and evolve and thrive, right? And the final thing I want to pick on today is collaboration. I wrote a book about collaboration. I am a champion of collaboration, and I regret a lot of the things I've said about it. I regret them because I think this word collaboration has become too much of an umbrella. I think in order for you to effectively collaborate, you really have to pick apart what we mean by collaboration and balance all the things that are in it. Because more often than not, when groups talk about collaboration, it loosely means working together. Think of all the ways you can work together. You can communicate with one another. You can coordinate with one another. You can consider one another's perspective. You can compromise with one another. You can build consensus with one another. All of these things take place. All of these things are important and have their place and time in how we work with one another. But when I see groups collaborating, it's like all hands on deck. Everybody's got to be in the room or we're not getting anything done. Everybody's got to agree or we're not going to move forward. I've watched collaboration, as great and as powerful as it can be, just paralyze groups. I've watched an organization that has some of the smartest people I've ever worked with have the same meeting 6 times because they couldn't, no one at any point would ever say, here's our decision. Because they waited for some magical set of balloons to go up from the middle of the conference room table that, hey, everybody just agreed, and confetti cannons go off, and now we all know we've got our signal, we can move ahead. Sometimes that never happens. Sometimes it's abundantly clear when everybody agrees, and that is an awesome feeling, and I think that's what a lot of people want all the time. Sometimes that doesn't happen. People and teams need to be empowered to make decisions. Decisions that are considerate of all the expertise and the experiences and the perspectives that go into the work we do. But we've got to make decisions. We've got to keep momentum going forward. So we've got to design our programs, our practices to do that, to empower people, to look for where consensus does emerge and build on that when it does, but empower people to be considerate of all of the different perspectives and make a decision to move the team forward. If I were to try to sum all of this up, what I would say that I have learned in organizational design is that there are a lot of big words, a lot of fun words, like collaboration, like innovation, like frameworks, and we talk about those a lot. But where the power in any design practice, not just organizational design, comes from is our ability to pick those things apart, to unpack them, to find the nuances, and really put things together in new combinations. And that's what I would encourage you to do. As you work with stakeholders, as you work with partners in IT or partners in design and partners in marketing or wherever you are, unpack these things. Think about what really goes into them. Think about your organization today and pick and choose the things that make the most sense for you. Thank you.